The way I've started to think about it is that data is upstream from everything, from training, from forecasting, from any kind of business you can think of. It depends in one way or another on data. It also depends on social sentiment because the entire economy is based around confidence, market sentiment, and social context. Data universe potentially has all of that within it. I think that's why we've had subnets coming to us. We're not going to them going, hey, do you want to use SN13? They're coming to us and asking about it. So potentially it's the most applicable, universally applicable subnet on Bittensor. Do you need data? Do you need it real time and on demand? We can make it happen.
And you have this balance between like viral signal and rich knowledge that we sort of try to play up and balance. And I think, as a team, we lean towards like seeking truth in that knowledge space, but there's a huge amount of value that you can get through that virality piece. So we kind of bounce them off and look back and forth. But generally, our bias is towards longer form content that has these dual use cases of being relevant and valuable in the AI field and useful and accessible in the sort of social intelligence field. So we try to find things that tick both their boxes.
Emissions can just distract teams from seeking revenue beyond the protocol because the subnet's making emissions, right? And you can live off that, you can hire people with that, and you can trade off that for a long time and just trade on hype and potential. And actually going into a real world marketplace is really it's a real test. And subnets need to pass that test sooner rather than later before they invest too much time and capital on routes that actually don't lead to real world impact.
Welcome to the Ventura Labs podcast. Today, we're joined by Zach and Will from Macrocosmos, exploring Subnet 13's 55 billion posts scraped from X, Reddit, and YouTube. They impact partnerships with Subnet 57, adding social context to weather forecasts, Subnet 44, enhancing sports predictions via sentiment analysis, and Subnet 64, powering AI agents with real-time tools. Expect insights on balancing volume versus speed for IOTA training and beyond, building a data marketplace, navigating structured versus unstructured data, and navigating market signals beyond emissions to generate real-world revenue. Now, back to Zach and Will with the 54th Ventura Labs podcast.
Zach, Will, Macrocosmos, how you guys doing today, man?
Yeah, good, man. It's nice to be back.
Good to see you, Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have you back, Will. Zach, good to get you on. Let's get into Subnet 13. How many rows of data are you at? You guys love touting the number. What's it at now?
It is at 55 billion rows, which my favorite anecdote fact about this is if you wrote it out on A4 paper at font script size 10 and stacked the A4 sheets on top of one another, you would be 25% of the way to the moon. Just in like single lines of data. So yeah, it's cosmic.
And for people that like don't understand the magnitude of 55 billion rows of data, is there any like comparisons of, oh, this data set, this prominent data set is this size, ours is this size?
I mean, I think on Subnet 13, we scrape about 300 million rows a day, give or take a little bit, goes up and down. And the best way to look at that is we index most of the relevant content on X and Reddit every day. So we kind of just have a full picture of social content on the internet, and the miners just do miraculous things to do that. And there's some really interesting, I guess, factors that emerge from that in the design of the incentive mechanism. So like we only reward miners for mining data when the data is real. So what we mean by it's real is if you make a post on Wednesday and delete it on Friday, that data is no longer real from a validation perspective because it could be faked, it could be made illegal. What we actually found out is miners have built like shadow systems behind the scraper systems to check 150 million rows a day for if things have been deleted or changed or edited or are still present to satisfy the validation. And I only discovered this last week, and I have no idea how you do this. Like Subnet 13 for me is still like one of the most confusing subnets we run because I just don't know how they scrape the amount of data they do. you can buy like a $5,000 a month Twitter account, an X account, and you can scrape 1 million rows a month. So unless these guys have got like 500 X, no, it's more than that. It's like 1.5 billion rows a month. So unless they've got like 10,000 X accounts and are spending $500 million, or I can't do the math today, Grant. Unless they're spending a hell of a lot of money, or it's just somebody at X who is hooked into Firehose on the back end, I have no idea how they do it. I really, really don't. Like, I spoke to one miner who used to, he bought 40,000 X accounts from Russia, parallelized them globally across a load of servers, and then randomly scraped overnight. And he succeeded with that for like a month. Then some guy crushed him, and then another guy crushed the guy who crushed him. So like 40,000 accounts from Russia isn't even enough to be competitive anymore. So I have no idea what they're doing. Like, I would have thought I would have been like top tier winning, and it's just not. Like 13, I think, is one of the most beautiful incentive functions in Bittensor, because we don't actually tell the miners what to do. Like, a lot of the, like a compute subnet, for example, for a compute subnet, you're rewarded for running this exact computer I tell you to in this exact way. It's very like big government. It's very like, you know, drive on the left-hand side of the road and only at 30 miles an hour. Well, it's like subnet 13's kind of like, yeah, on the we're in Texas now. We don't have, we're on the highways. We don't have no driving speed out here. You just take that Mustang and you put your foot down, Sonny, and let that V8 work out the rest of it. And the miners are the V8 engine. That's the best way I have of explaining it in an Austin slang to you, Grant.
It's such a perfect demonstration of Bittensor's power and what you can achieve when you align incentives and get the miners properly working on your side. I think, you know, when Subnet 13 launched, we ended up becoming the largest repository of social media data on Hugging Face within about 6 months of launch. So it just absolutely outperformed every other system, every other known system for gathering data that's out there. And it proved very quickly, like, if you can get the alignment right, that the miners are super powerful, and Bittensor can just eat up ground better than anything else out there.
When you go to commercial entities looking to sell the data from Macrocosmos, from Subnet 13, how do you explain it? Like, they're like, how do you have so much data? What's your answer for them?
I mean, a lot of the time, that's not really the question people ask. Like, there's a $5 billion a year data scraping market. So data scraping is relatively well understood. You can buy public access to APIs for companies, but often they're very expensive or come with configurations, or you're locked into one vendor, or people scrape. So when we speak to customers, often we just say that we have a better scraper. And, you know, we don't tell them that we don't know how it works all the time. We do know implicitly how it works. But what's interesting about Subnet 13 is we aren't actually scraping. The miners might just be buying that data on the marketplace in a completely legal manner. So from our perspective, we assume that, you know, and our T's and C's say you have to acquire this data in a legal method, but it's actually a little bit cleaner than when you're running your own scraper that might violate terms and conditions yourself. We provision you with the data from the miners in the best way we can. And customers don't really, it's the same thing where a lot of people don't ask how technology works. Some people are really interested. They're like, but how does the system function? But we just say it's bigger and it's faster and it's better. And usually that keeps people happy from that side.
That's a good enough sell for them. And then in Bittensor itself, you guys have a few partnerships now with other subnets. Why do you think, well, let's get into specific partnerships. Y'all recently released a paper with 57 Gaia. There's a partnership there. How is that structured? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I've worked with a few teams now, and we got a lot of interest after we launched Gravity and Nebula back in February on a novelty search with Const. SM57 started working with the API key about maybe 2 months ago, and building back-end integrations with our engineers here. So SM57 launched a global weather task, global weather data collection, and they wanted to use SM13 to create a social context layer. So it's like, okay, we can incentivize miners to gather weather data in different parts of the world according to different variables, like 20 different variables about atmospheric pressure and wind speed and topography, so that they can put together a really accurate map of what the weather forecast will be. But then you don't just want to know the weather, you need to understand the social context around it. And that's what they wanted to use SM13 for. So they started by making a customized newsfeed that they built into their dashboard. Now they're moving on to creating a much more dynamic representation of predicted behavior and anticipated behavior, so that they can not just predict the weather, but then also create scenarios and analyze and make predictions on what the weather is likely to do in certain communities. And that's where they think a lot of value lies. So it's still early days. There's a number of different use cases, but already they've built the newsfeed. Already they're plugging it into their global weather task, and soon it will be much more of a dynamic social context layer. So they're building with it fast, and lots of other subnets are interested in doing it as well.
And some of the other subnets you have, Score, Subnet 44, also has a partnership with you guys. How does their partnership look like?
Yeah, they were the first team to get in touch with us and want to build with SM13, and they've been doing so for a little while now. They are often called sports, soccer prediction and forecasting. They're really a computer vision subnet, but a lot of their attention has come from being able to predict soccer games with more accurately than any other system that's out there. And one of the areas that they can provide value for football clubs is being able to ascertain the extent to which social media commentary affects player performance. So it's like, if there was a big match coming up and a player was caught in some kind of scandal, there was some kind of doubt over whether he was going to play, then at some point with enough data, you'll be able to model the likely drop or uptick in his performance, just based on the metadata from social media discussions about that player through keywords and hashtags. So by understanding the social context, you can unearth insights that could be valuable for clubs, for sports psychology, and ultimately team sports, one of the most complex things you can try and model. They're really, really hard to predict and anticipate. They're really hard to forecast. And one of the reasons why is because of psychology and because of the social element. That's what they think they can build with SM13.
I honestly think, like, I'm like a rabid Spurs fan. It's the only thing I have bad to say about Score is that they're Arsenal supporters, which is unfortunate. But like, when I've been in like really football and sports obsessed days of my career, and you're like tracking all the threads and like the Reddit posts and the X posts and like the comments on the Guardian, and actually sometimes people in the comments have way better ideas than the manager. Like, sub that player, he's slow, like he's fat, he's useless, get him off the pitch. And some of those contents are nonsensical, but there is signal in the noise. And I think that's the reality with 13 that we've seen across a lot of use cases. I think 13 is one of the, if not the most integrated subnet on Bittensor. It was the first tool launched in Squad. Like, I think Agent Towler and a bunch of other people are using it. And I keep meeting people who are like, yeah, we're using the 13 API. And I'm like, cool, I had no idea about that, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And I think social media data like has a few value use cases. One is just signal, like an immediacy of signal and noise and interpretation. Like, what's the opinion on the new Apple phone? What's the new feeling about a football player or anything else? But it's also really rich content. Like, we recently launched YouTube transcriptions on 13 subnet. Like, YouTube podcasts like this are really good forms of long form, descriptive, thoughtful content. And they're kind of inaccessible today. So being able to pull that, transcribe it is really useful bluntly for model training. And you know, there's a multitude of court cases going through now about the fact that pretty much every frontier lab has rated Reddit, rated X, rated YouTube for this data, because it's the fuel that powers models, powers fine-tuning, powers reinforcement learning, question answer pairs, like all of these pieces that are really, really critical to train a good AI model. And I think in Score's context, they're interested in using that to train all manner of specific fine-tunes and edge cases around fan prediction, around sentiment. But for us, it's raw fuel for IOTA. So, you know, we're already using subnet 13 sampled into the training data for IOTA. We're going to be doing more of that downstream and a lot more on the synthetic data front, but I'm not going to break any news on that. So news coming on synthetic data.
The way I've started to think about it is that data is upstream from everything, from training, from forecasting, from any kind of business you can think of. It depends in one way or another on data. It also depends on social sentiment, because the entire economy is based around confidence, market sentiment, and social context. Data universe potentially has all of that within it. And I think that's why we've had subnets coming to us. We're not going to them going, hey, do you want to use SN13? They're coming to us and asking about it. So potentially it's the most applicable, universally applicable subnet on Bittensor. Do you need data? Do you need it real time and on demand? We can make it happen. It can be faster, more efficient than any other system out there. We just need to be able to figure out the right way of plugging in to a subnet's backend. And as SM44 and 57 show, it can really power performance.
And then just to come full circle with your subnet partnership, 64 with Squads also uses Data Universe. In what capacity do they use it? How is their application?
Yeah.
Of
So
13?
Squads, as the AI agent platform that's built by Rayon Labs, makers of Shoots. So they, when they launched Squads, they launched with two tools that you could plug in to the agents that you build on Squad. So you can go on Squad and you can create an agent that, say, is Crime Watch in Los Angeles. And you want to monitor, you want to put together different signals from the local area, from the news, from open source data sets, and come up with an agent that just reports on crime in a particular neighborhood. On Squad, you can do that, and you can use SM1 for web retrieval and SM13 for data scraping from social media. So you can build the agent with those data scraping capabilities with that social context using the Squad AI platform. So it was the first two tools that were available on launch were SM1 and SM13. And again, that's because if you're going to have an AI agent, a lot of them, in fact, almost all of them that I could think of, they're going to need some kind of social context or awareness in order to be a good agent, right? In the same way that if you're going to be any good at your job, you need some kind of social awareness. You need some kind of awareness of what is going on right now in the world, in your community, in your life. So there's been some interesting agents on that platform so far, but again, it's proof that loads of use cases.
I personally like Macrocosmos Enthusiast bot, which just scrapes Macrocosmos posts and bull posts.
2 5-star reviews.
2 5-star reviews. One of them is me. It's not actually not built or endorsed by Macrocosmos, but still the best bot on Squad.
We were surprised to see that, but pleased.
They got the fanboys.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you created 13, what were your expectations for how it was going to be utilized versus how you've seen it utilized in reality? Because from 57 to 64, those and 44, those are all very different use cases for the data of 13.
Honestly, when we originally built 13, we imagined it as a volumetric scrape a lot of data to feed model training. That was the original purpose. So the design of the system was all about asymmetry. It was all about downloading lots of data. We weren't super interested in speed because that wasn't the use case we imagined. We were really just focused on scale. Again, it was all about providing for training. And I think we're coming full circle to that with the use cases for IOTA. But I think finding more people having desires to use the data for real-time cases or for specialized and domain-specific cases where they're like, I don't need 55 billion rows, I need 10 million rows, 15 million rows is really interesting. And so that was the big thing for us. It's why we built Gravity. It's why we built the real-time API. And maybe I'm going to steal and give you a quick demo on a couple use cases, Grant, when it lets me share my screen. So like
Yeah, of
a
course.
couple things that are not public yet, first shown on this is Tau Stats and this is Doug. And
Oh,
you can now ask Doug to use the Subnet 13 API to give you any context on any X post or something else. So this is summarizing the last 3 posts, 3 weeks post from the Macrocosmos account. We asked it, what is it doing talking about IOTA? And strangely, and this is Chris's fault, all we've been talking about is Subnet 13 and Gravity and going to market. So it summarizes all the work, releases, community engagement, what we're doing in the broader ecosystem, and then says they don't seem to be doing anything on IOTA right now. Maybe you should ask them about that, which is, it's good feedback for us. But this is a really good example of using the real-time API, the model context protocol server we've released as part of that, and anyone can integrate this as a tool into systems they're building, which is really powerful. The second part of this, and I guess this is cool, is this is something we're working on internally, which is building a full data marketplace for Data Universe. So this is a dev branch. It's not ready to show yet. So some of these pieces are there, but we're going to be packaging data sets that users can pull together, like around anything from Tau. So you can create a Tau data set with all of the big people you want to follow, all the sentiments, all the information, visualize a nebula, pull that together, trend all that information, search it, and almost like a Bittensor Hugging Face data set repo. So we're working on that a lot at the moment. That's likely to release. I'm not going to give any promises on deadlines, but hopefully soon. We're just tidying out some bugs on our side, but we're really excited about that as a way of making that 55 billion data set more accessible and more personal.
Right. So this is what really excites me about it, is that there's 2 things here with the SN13 plugin to Doug on Tau Stats, and then the marketplace. If you really want to understand data, if it's really going to be useful to you, you need to be able to query it, right? You don't just want like hundreds of millions of rows of data that somewhere buried in there is the signal that you're looking for. You want to be able to ask, to query, and to find what's relevant about it. So be able to have a plugin like that into Tau Stats where you can ask, hey, what have Macrocosmos been posting about lately? Because you're looking at Tau Stats to wonder, okay, are this team active? Are they legit? Are they like actually shipping, or are they resting on their laurels? So the queryable aspect is a really powerful demonstration where you go, I get it now. In the same way that it took the web browser to make the internet popular, because suddenly you could actually, in natural language, search the web and find what you needed in that massive repository of data, right? So making it queryable is a really big step forward, and it's a proven way of getting more people to unlock what's useful to them. And then the marketplace, what happens when you query the data set? When you've ascertained that it's useful, that there's signal in there, you package it up, you socially validate it. I found this really useful. This is a good data set. And you pass it on. You sell it. You share it, right? So it's like if someone finds a good link and they put it onto Reddit, people can upvote it. It creates this social validation where this is useful information. This is high signal. This is great. And if we create a marketplace for that, we can allow people to upload these data sets and show us where the signal is themselves.
yeah. I mean, I have a few questions on this. On the marketplace, something that I saw there was content type, and it had image, text, and video. Is Data Universe going multimodal?
We maintain the possibility of going multimodal, but I will not say that. I think one of the reasons for the image types is we do pull information from that. We have like Subnet 13 already like pulls all the records for media from X and Reddit and otherwise. There are some more questions about the content piece and some of the terms of legality. So we're working through that, but hopefully, like, and I think what's more important is we can store any type of data on this platform. It's built for scale. So some of the other stuff we're going to be doing around large synthetic data sets for training and supporting post-processed data sets to support fine-tuning or otherwise will all be available through this. So really, really big data sets for text, video, image, any of those other pieces. And we're looking at what are the data sources we could start to push into 13 now. We've got a really good end-to-end flow for the platform. That's what we've been really focused on for 4 or 5 months, really, getting everything tightened up from the subnet all the way through to the user. There's a lot more screens and stuff we're working on reskinning the UX. We weren't super happy with the first version, so we've been doing a lot of work internally on that. Really excited to release that when it comes out. But we think that's going to make it much easier to help customers access it, help build social cohesion. Even things like the number one most requested data set I get to people is like, can I just see all the tau trends? Like, what's the sentiment about subnet 1, subnet 9, subnet 4? And be able to package that in one place where people can access it. It pulls your tweets, Chris's tweets, Zach's tweets, my tweets, Rob's tweets, everyone's tweets. And you have that picture of like, what sentiment? Is it good this week? Is it bad this week? What's the mood on detail? How do you ingest Discord and other pieces? And we want to make it much easier for users to click, get straight to that thing they care about. Because I think what we found with the sort of infinitely configurable crawler we built is people don't really know what they want to search for. Like if I'm like trying to discover about Bittensor, I'm probably happy to search for a Bittensor curated data set and go to that and pay to access that, rather than I need to crawl like, okay, who are the main influences? Who are these topics? Who are these things? So we're trying to make it as simple as possible, people to get value from that data set in as many different ways as possible.
Yeah. That's why we built Mission Commander, again, using SM1 to be able to give people like an AI assistant interface where you can be like, hey, I'm looking for like insights around how sentiment around net zero has changed since Doge and since Trump came into office. That's what you want to do instead of, I need to think of like 100 keywords right now or all the different subreddits. You want an AI agent to understand your goal and then populate that for you so that you can reach it. The data sets is taking that to the next level. It's like the next level up of, and then when you agglomerate that, these are the data sets that people find most useful on Bittensor, on trading analysis, on viral memes. And then we can start to understand the insights based on those meta trends.
And the ability to curate that data set, to package it together, is that going to be all on your end? Is that going to be something you put on miners and then reward them for how many people use their data set? What's it going to look like for who creates those different data set groups?
I mean, it's a good idea. Like we have a couple aspects to it. One is, in simple terms, anyone. So like if you want to come and create the best subnet, best Bittensor data set, crack on and build it. If you build it for yourself, you're going to be able to publish that or otherwise. We are interested in these like more tokenomic ways of incentivizing people. Can we help tie those pieces in? I think it's a really interesting idea, but right now the point is it's a free access platform. And so if you come and build that data set, if you're subscribing, if you're paying a license fee, we're working out whether it's sort of a tier-based system where you get access to all these data sets as opposed to a classic download rows. Like we think because we have all this data and the mechanism scrapes it, for us it's about pulling more people into the data universe rather than getting them to pull stuff out of it. So we want to create a space where people can create these things, draw more traction, draw more attention, draw more users, and start that flywheel. And right now we're really interested in this as the sort of core focus of, I guess, the UX flow development right now. So like, you know, if you'd like to be a beta user, Grant, you can make some data sets, you can, you know, tag some stuff together. Maybe you have your own little spaceman avatar. We can hook you up, man. We can hook you up.
Grant with a spaceman avatar would be interesting. Okay. And then in terms of the speed versus scale aspect, what has the feedback been of where the demand's at? Is it more about that real-time data, or is it more about purely scale using to train?
I think it's both. And the reality is like we found the demand for real time and we just have both mechanisms within 13. So like for us, one of the upsides of foolishly building 5 subnets is we're very good at doing lots of things in one incentive. So for some teams, you know, their subnet does one thing. Subnet 13 actually does volume scraping of 3 different sources, and real-time access to sources. We're actually pulling the web search functionality from subnet 1 into 13, so we think it's a better home for it. So subnet 13 does like 10 things, and the miner community do all of these things. There's different specialized groups. It means we really use the miners. We have like a broader diversity there. But honestly, uptake has been pretty good for both. And we've also found there's playoffs in the system. So sometimes the volume crawler might take 20 minutes, an hour to come back with 1 million rows, 500,000 rows. What we can use is use the real-time API to flood stuff in so people can get a taste of what they're using up front. So we're increasingly on our side, combining bits and pieces, finding the best ways to make them fit, working out sort of the best parts for monetization and other stuff, and test it with customers a lot of the time. Like, you know, there's a thesis that the SDK and the API have both been really popular. A lot of people have used them. A lot of the subnet teams who are very aware of it. We're trying to get that out to as many developer communities as possible through things like Squad and otherwise. But we're also very much focused on, like, can we create easy UX for people to access this, brands to look at this, media agencies to look at this and use this, and try to get to those use cases. But it just takes a little bit longer to build all those functionalities out.
I think what we're seeing is that, as Will said, the 2 use cases, they link together, they dovetail. If you need the real-time data, the historic data sets are probably going to be useful to you as well. And if you're looking into the historic data sets, sooner or later there'll be a real-time use case that will support that. So it's like on Gaia, they can use the historic data sets that we've amassed through SN13 for in-depth analysis for their research. So that can help them to direct their research onto how to analyze and process and evaluate climate data, because we've got these big historic data sets, right? But then if there's a big impact environmental event, if there's a big storm, or if there's a big emergency environmentally with the climate, then they'll want a kind of live event intelligence crawler, where instead it'll be much more about using SN13's API for really intense and focused monitoring, right? Now, they're going to want to be able to do both of those, and they both link together because one will become the historic data set in due course. So we find that a lot of clients, they're more interested in one than the other, but they're often aware that one leads to the other, and sooner or later they integrate.
How do you guys go about adding different sources? Right now it's X, Reddit, and YouTube. How do you evaluate adding new sources?
It's a little bit about market demand. We actually poll the community quite a lot in the miner channels. So some of it's like trying to work out what the best ways for and what the customers and clients you want to go for after. So we've looked at, I guess, more social media data as a sort of use case. Do we get TikTok, Instagram, these other things? But that data is valuable for social media sentiment and those things, but it's not actually that valuable for the AI. You know, like videos of people like cooking eggs, is like the transcripts of that are just not that rich. Well as looking at things like archive, legacy media, you know, essay sources, you know, planning documents, legal documents are the sort of things we're quite interested in now, because they provide a lot more knowledge. And, you know, you have this balance between like viral signal and rich knowledge that we sort of try to play up and balance. And I think, you know, as a team, we lean towards like seeking truth in that knowledge space, but there's a huge amount of value that you can get through that virality piece. So we kind of bounce them off and look back and forth. But generally our bias is towards longer form content that has these dual use cases of being relevant and valuable in the AI field and useful and accessible in the sort of social intelligence field. So we try to find things that tick both their boxes.
They're like 2 different dimensions. It's like the virality and what's socially popular. If we do find videos of frying eggs, it's relevant if we have the metadata around, hey, this is really trending and it correlates with this other trend, and it shows that actually we can forecast that you should do a video of frying more eggs next week at this specific time. But as Will says, we are primarily interested in data that can be valuable when through model training. And for that, you need much richer data sets that are much more validated. And what's amazing is that actually there are enormous amounts of data sets that do have validated data in them. For example, planning submissions. For example, earnings and trading information of publicly traded companies. There are lots of really well-labeled, validated data sets out there that we can agglomerate and we can create signal from and we can potentially train models with. So it's a balance between those two dimensions, but it's like we're at the beginning of like a data like explosion, and we have this really powerful tool for drawing it together.
And being at the beginning of this data explosion, where data is the fuel to create AIs, how do you view structured versus unstructured data?
I think it's a balancing act. Like, I for my sins have a degree in data science and machine learning, and like the first thing you do as a data scientist is you clean data. Like it's just it's the number one thing. You import, you clean, you do this. Like a lot of the data we get from X and otherwise comes with a lot of natural structure. I think, you know, you see what Ready AI and others are doing. You know, Ready AI is a really good use case, I guess. Ready AI, I think all the data that they structure comes from 13. I think they were the first subnet to ever use 13. They built labeling stacks on top of it that pull it from Hugging Face and all these pieces. And like, you know, that structured data comes from the raw fuel from 13. So for us, we're super excited about that. If they can do that and drive forward with that, that's brilliant for us. I don't know if it powers Tau Agent or how they get that. You know, that's the Dave Fields problem. But like you have this balance between driving structure and then looking at really good data. Like for training, you want to get down to the best pairs, the best samples, the best pieces. And it's not even like structured data. It's like structured, cleaned, and very carefully selected data. And that's one of the things that through the marketplace we'll be able to offer, where we can curate those 55 billion rows, put them up, post them, put them for sale, or ask miners to do the same. You know, right now, the subnet 13 incentive is all about scale and speed. We're going to find ways through the product and the platform to add quality as another metric.
Interesting. And in terms of data privacy, is that possible with what you guys are doing for the marketplace? Could people upload proprietary data sets?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm just trying to ponder if you upload a data set for sale, is it then private? But all joking aside, yeah, the platform's secured. Like from our side, that hosting service is not on the subnet; it's on air gap servers that have full security and full lockout. So we very much could move into that space. We also think it's a great place to host some of the other data sets that are generated out of Bittensor. Like I think like Omega, who were doing media data ages ago, or like subsets of the stuff that 404gen are doing. If you want to buy 3D generated data, like the payment rails and system is all built to enable that at an ecosystem level, and hopefully allow us to sort of create monetization pathways for other teams through that. So, you know, for us, like we've always had this vision of building a constellation, a marketplace is a good way for that. Like, how do you create ways to get value, not just from what we're doing on 13, but other subnets and pieces in the place? So, you know, whether it's structured data sets for 44 or beyond. I don't have all the answers, Grant, but we hope that somebody else in the community will help come up with those as well.
So the miners, when they scrape X as it stands and Reddit, they're just scraping the posts, and that would count as unstructured data. And it also means that it doesn't take all the personal records associated with that data. But even without that, you can generate much higher order insights from that unstructured data. So back in like October, November, when SN13 was really starting to accelerate, and we thought, well, we're getting all these rows in, how can we show what's useful about it? How can we actually just get people to like pay attention to how powerful this tool is? This was pre-detail. This was a time when Bittens had way less attention on it than it does now. And we realized, okay, well, let's have a look at all the posts associated with the US election in November. And even just by going, okay, let's just look at how many posts are about Trump and how many are about Kamala Harris, and then conduct some really basic sentiment analysis on it, we saw that actually when everyone else was saying it's going to be really close, it gave us about a 71% lean towards Trump. So we did a post about this. We did a series of posts. We did an article pre the election going, this is what the social media data says. And then the election happened, and it was way less close than all the pollsters had said it was going to be. And then that week in The Economist, and I think also in the Financial Times, there were articles saying, oh, maybe the era of pollsters is over. Maybe social media data is actually more accurate and a better signal for political voting intention than pollsters asking people who you're going to vote for. So even just with unstructured data that doesn't have a lot of that personal information attached to it, if you're smart about how you use it, you're quite dexterous with it, you can still create higher order insights that outcompete what professionals are doing.
And what does success look like for you guys here on 13? If you achieve X, Y, Z, when will you guys be happy with it?
Index the world. It's one mission. No, I think we have a couple really tactical objectives right now. One is create really good data sets for training. That's like a mission-driven goal. And the other is start driving revenue into this thing. And we're working really hard to do that. We have a bunch of people pushing, speaking to customers, trying to drive that in, getting as much capital flowing into the subnet as we can, because despite that sort of mission-driven purpose being about training models, we have all of these opportunities to monetize that data separately. So those are our very tactical objectives for this year: supporting training on IOTA and getting revenue and building revenue off their team. And it's a real focus for most of the team right now.
It's like a horizontal and like a vertical integration here, because like it works. And moreover, it really shows the power of Bittensor, because already we have the subnet scraping, 50, 100 million rows a day. And on top of that, we have products. You can use Gravity and Nebula, so data scraping and data visualization, without knowing anything about Bittensor, without knowing anything about mining. The products sit on top of the subnet, and you can use them. That their interface is designed to be used without any interaction with the blockchain or the protocol at all. So these two working products, two products that anyone can use, and providing access to those is one way of commercializing it. And there are so many use cases that you might want to use them for, from trading signals to marketing to brand innovation. And we're pushing hard on that to find the product market fit that's most appropriate. So that's one side. And then on the other, it's like, well, we have the kind of DAI tech stack. We have on IOTA a pre-training protocol that is first of its kind and is potentially going to train the largest decentralized model ever. To do that, you need huge volumes of data. It's very powerful that we have SN13 to create that pipeline of useful, high quality data sets in order to train those models. And then from that, if you can then create those data sets if you can validate the quality of those data sets and then sell them onto training for other organizations, then even better.
One last question for you guys before we wrap up here today, and that is, what advice would you guys have for other subnets or people trying to create commercial use cases for the commodities produced by subnets?
I think so. A couple thoughts from how we've looked at this at other subnets. And some of our when we first started as a business, we were just trying to work out, could we make these things work? And again, I'm like, can I scrape? I use 30. Can we scrape a load of data? Awesome, it scrapes loads of data. What do we do with that data? We've had to be much more specific, going and talking to a lot of customers about how do they want that data, which bits do they care about. Stuff like, for example, for us, we didn't care about retweets and likes for training data. It's not that valuable to us. Like the number of likes isn't something that we're putting into the training data, except as a signal for it's been seen a lot of times. For brand tracking and sentiment analysis, it's really important. So we've had to go back and get that. So I think thinking about where might you end up in a while. And it's the same story with any startup. You have an original idea, finding product market fit takes time. And just expect to be wrong as much as you expect to be right.
My advice for subnet teams looking for commercial models and to find that commercial fit with their subnet, very similar to Will's, you've got to get that market signal as early as possible. And I think sometimes Bittensor can be a double-edged sword. Emissions can just distract teams from seeking revenue beyond the protocol because the subnet's making emissions, right? And you can live off that, you can hire people with that, and you can trade off that for a long time and just trade on hype and potential. And actually going into a real world marketplace is really it's a real test, and subnets need to pass that test sooner rather than later before they invest too much time and capital on routes that actually don't lead to real world impact. So it's like, saying we scraped the largest open source repository of data in the world, a lot of businesses will be like, great, I don't care. That's great for us. That's exciting for Bittensor.
The counterfactual to that is they're just like, cool, I'll download that and not give you any money. It's not open source anymore. It's closed source now to alpha holders of subnet 13. No, exactly. I think some of the legacy data sets are still there.
Exactly. So it's like the things we do on the protocol, they excite us. Are you sure that the customers care? And how do you know that? And how can you validate that, prove it, and defend it so that you can actually start bringing revenue in beyond the chain?
Zach, Will, always a pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks so much, Grant.
Pleasure.